Good evening. My name is Sarah Howard, and I'm the Youth and Community Services Manager here for the Daniel Boone Regional Library. We're so glad to have you here this evening. Tonight we have Catherine Miller here. She's the program coordinator for the Triple P program, and it's part of the Boone County Early Childhood Coalition. And this evening she's going to talk to us about parenting the highly sensitive child and ways to parent without consistent outbursts and meltdowns and having to walk on eggshells with your child. So we're looking forward to that. So I'm going to turn it over to lovely Catherine Miller, and take it away, Catherine.
Thank you. Hi, welcome everybody. Tonight we're going to talk about parenting the sensitive child. We'll really kind of focus on the younger age child. We'll do teens maybe another time. That's a totally different ballpark. But we really want to just kind of look at parenting that child and how we can work through the struggles of that child and really helping that child to succeed. And so what I want to kind of start off with is telling you a little bit about me and the work that I do. And then I'll jump right into our topic. So as Sarah said, my name is Catherine Miller. I am the Triple P coordinator, which stands for Positive Parenting Program. And this service is provided by the Boone County Children's Services Board. That means that as long as you live in Boone County, this service is free. So that means you can do one-on-ones with me for free, as well as attending any of the seminars that we have for free. I'll have Sarah put in the chat how to get a hold of me. My email address is the best way now. I'm personally in and out the office, working some in the office, working some out. So email gets to me regardless of whether I'm in the office or not. If you look up our website, bcecc.org, you could also send a message to us and we'd be able to get that and get connected with you as well. So that's a little bit about me. The program itself, we usually work on some challenging behaviors or behaviors that's maybe gone awry. So during the pandemic, we worked a lot with fears. We worked a lot with tantrums, bedtime issues, mainly a lot of tantruming, schedules and routines are some things that we worked on a lot. Of course, the pandemic isn't over, but as we are emerging, several parents have come back for just some different varying issues where, you know, they have a good handle on it, but maybe need a little tweaking of something. So they've come back and got some help. So how long is a session? So usually we meet for about an hour. The first session usually let me know what's going on. We get kind of a grasp of it. And then we work on a plan. And so we work on a plan that's going to work best for you. I send you back out, you execute the plan. Then we come back and we talk about it. We talk about things that are going well, things that are maybe need to go a little better. And then we make a plan and I send you back out and you execute that and then we come back. And so what we do is really step by step and work through how these things can benefit your family and how we can make the changes. Now, if I worked with your child may respond better to me. And then when I'm out of the picture, you know, you still may struggle with your kiddo. That's why I work with you and then you implement the change so that when I'm no longer in the picture, you can still implement the change. The goal is to give you the skills and the resources to be able to make these changes with your kids versus me working with your child and then me having the skills and making the changes. Hopefully you will be able to make those changes and then kind of alter the things that we do into working for another situation, you know. So usually we learn about reward systems, consequences, you know, different strategies to put in play because not all kids are the same. And not all strategies work for each child or, you know, even the family. So you guys are welcome to come and make an appointment and we'll go through it and make some changes. So tonight we're going to be talking about that highly sensitive child and, you know, how it can really be a struggle with the whole family when you have a child who's sensitive and you don't know, you know, is today going to be a good day? Is today going to be a not so good day? Is this child going to blow up today or is this child going to blow up on the way to the car, on the way to a program? You know, you just don't know the mood of your child and what's going to happen. And so the struggle with that is, you know, you sometimes limit the things your family can do or were willing to do because you're afraid of the behavior that that child might exhibit if you go somewhere. Maybe you limit your play dates or friends coming over because you're afraid of what your child might say or do if friends come over. You may be worn out and just really stressed dealing with the child who's highly sensitive and you just don't know what's going to happen. That can put a lot of stress on you. Sometimes we don't think about it. If you could put a strain on a relationship with your partner, if you're both arguing about discipline and struggling to discipline a child, it may cause that strain in that relationship, especially if you aren't parenting on board. So I actually often recommend that both parents or both sets of parents, because I've worked with co-parents as well, but anyone who is parenting the child kind of be a part of the process of change, because if they aren't implementing as we need them to, they may kind of derail the process of what we're going through. So I have a few notes here that I'll talk to. I'll be looking at it just, to remind me. But the first thing I want to talk about is, us as parents, or those as the caretakers, how we respond. And so the first thing is kind of letting go of your defensiveness, your guard, your anger, your frustration, all the things that may come out when your child acts the way that they do. Children respond to our actions. So if we are frustrated, we are annoyed, we are upset, all those things that play into your feelings and definitely may be validated, the child usually can pick up on that and they may respond to your feelings versus your words or your request. Sometimes we want to talk about our kids' individuality and, we really want to validate who they are and make sure that we're discussing that, we're concerned with, we want to make changes of their behavior, not necessarily the child, right? So we're not trying to say the child is bad. We're not saying that, we're really frustrated with the child. We're really trying to get the child to understand that we're frustrated with the behaviors that they're having or the words that they're saying, or maybe the combination of both. So when you are really upset and you let go of that, oftentimes there's words that you can't take back that might be said, hurtful things that may be said. And not only does that child hear that and may internally take that in, they also may exhibit that back. So they may be, when they're upset, talking negative to, themselves, talking negative to other people, kind of imitating the behavior that you've given them. So making sure that you're creating some boundaries and, for yourself, is this a good time to have a conversation with my child about what they've done or how they're reacting? Is this a good time to continue on? Can I lay out consequences in a fair manner? Can I have a discussion in a fair manner? Those are some things that you need to check yourself before having that conversation with them. So, I'm sorry, there's like a hair in my eye. So perhaps you need to pause, send them to a safe area, perhaps their room, have a seat on the couch. If you have a designated calming space, say that, hey, we both need to take a time out and we both need to calm down so that we can have a good discussion. Set a timer for 5 minutes, collect your own thoughts, have yourself ready to have that conversation with your child, and then be prepared to start a conversation with them. So the second thing we want to talk about is kind of, how are we returning their feelings? So yes, we see they're frustrated, upset, or whatever it is. One of the things I think that really helps parents to understand their emotionally fragile child, we'll call them, is when we can say that we give grace for feeling however you want to feel, right? So people are entitled to feel how they feel. Doesn't mean you have to own it, doesn't mean that you have to agree with it, but we do have to recognize that just because we don't think someone should feel a certain way doesn't take away the validation of how they truly feel. So even if your fragile child feels wronged and maybe there is no reason for them to feel wronged, that's how they feel. So how do we work through getting them to understand their feelings and their emotions that they've attached to something? And so that kind of starts with showing them some empathy, saying things like, I'm really sorry that you feel upset right now, right? So we're not validating that they're upset, but we're sorry that they're feeling that way. We can all say, hey, I wouldn't want any of my friends to be upset or sad or any of those feelings, right? So we're not validating what they're doing, but we're just validating and bringing up, hey, I see you're upset. I see you're sad. I see your whatever the emotion that you want to give to it, right? And give them a chance, depending on their age, but give them a chance to respond. So if you say, hey, you know, it really seems like you're really sad, pause and let them kind of get a chance to agree with you. Maybe they respond and say, I'm not sad, I'm angry, right? And if they say that, you can say, well, tell me why you're angry, right? It gives us a chance to hear their emotions and understand where they're coming from, versus sometimes we're really upset and we may say, there's no need to cry, there's no need to act this way. And so we invalidate the feelings that they're having by telling them there's no need to act in a certain manner. Even if that's your thought, right? Nobody wants to be, wants their feelings to be invalidated. Everyone wants to feel validated and feel important to people. So making sure that we're validating our kids' feelings, even if we don't agree with the behavior. Again, we're really looking at that feeling and trying to discuss that feeling so that we can get to why we did the behavior or why we said what we said. So, you know, an example of this might be, I see you're angry with me and I really want to hear about it. I want you to tell me what's going on. So tell me why you're mad at me. Tell me why you're upset. Tell me why you slammed the door. Tell me why you hurt your brother, right? We want to hear the feelings and we want to hear the whys behind it. And then we're going to address it with that feeling. Well, I'm really sorry that you were angry, or whatever feeling they gave with you, but I want to work through this with you. Or if it was, let's say you wanted them to go take a bath and they didn't want to take a bath and it led to a tantrum or a fight, you know, you want to be able to say, I'm really sorry that you got upset, but you know what, it's bath time. And the rule at bath time is we do the following. So when we can say that, children have a harder time to be able to fight back and forth with you. But what does that mean? So that means as parents, there has to be consistency and rules, balance, structure, those kind of things set up and play so that you can say back to your child, you broke the rule of this, right? We agreed in this house, we do not hit, for example, and you hit. So because of that, it's my job to give a consequence for that, right? So we're saying these are the rules, and because you broke the rules, then this is why a consequence is coming. It's easier to accept a consequence, or it's easier to accept that something is coming when we knew the rules ahead of time. And so if there isn't a rule set and all of a sudden you think about it, you know, so let's say a kid slams a door and you're like, we don't slam doors in this house. But that was never a rule. You consider it to be common sense, right? We don't angrily slam doors in the house. You felt like this is common sense. We never had a discussion about it. So you're like, you slammed that door. We don't slam doors in this house. Go to your room. I'll tell you when to come out. So now your child is upset because they're either, you know, going to the room, B, they don't know when they're going to be allowed out, C, you just yelled at them, and D, they didn't even know it was a rule they broke. They were just expressing their anger. And so if we had had discussions about what the rules were, when they broke that rule, you would have been able to say, we don't slam doors in this house. Because you slammed the door, you're going to go to your room for the next, I don't know how old they are, let's say they're 10. You're going to go to your room for the next 10 minutes, and then we're going to have a discussion about why we're slamming doors in the house, so we know the rule is no slamming doors, right? So we're really putting some things in place and discussing behaviors, how they occur, and then we're addressing them accordingly. So the next thing I want you guys to talk about is making sure that we have, you know, discipline in place. And so I kind of mentioned that just a minute ago when I was talking about rules. So one thing that I really think is helpful and like to institute is what I call family rules. And so as well as having family meetings. So when you have a family meeting, you bring everyone to the table that's included in the family, even if it's the littles, depending on how little they are, right? So around that 3 or 4 age range would be good. And we talk about the rules of the house and how we want the week to go, or the things that we expect. So if we're going to make changes in the household, then we have a family meeting to discuss what the changes are, so that everybody's aware of the changes and everybody's on board. So if we were going to discuss chores in the house, chores wasn't something that everyone always did. And, maybe one of the parents is really struggling getting housework done and getting things completed, and it's really wearing on them. And so, we may meet and discuss, well, what does the family pitch in? What does the family do? And mom or dad or grandma or somebody in the household may say, the kids really don't do anything. It's up to the adults, but the adults are really busy, or they're working extra hours, or we're all taking different kids to different venues and or not venues, activities, right? So it seems like kids have all kinds of activities they're doing, from gymnastics to volleyball, baseball, softball, t-ball, you name it, kids are involved in it, right? So parents spend a lot of time chauffeuring kids. And by the time you get dinner in them and baths done and maybe homework, parents are exhausted just like kids are exhausted. So what's the plan for the family on keeping the house clean? Do we have daily chores for people? Do we have weekly chores? Is house cleaning majorly done on Saturdays? But what's going to be the rule in the house to get housekeeping done? So you guys may ask the kids in the household, when would you like to have your chores done? When can you best do it? What's it going to look like? So everybody is a part of the meeting and everybody is having a discussion about it. And then, assigning tasks, assigning chores, where are those written down? How are you keeping track of those? Those are all things that you would discuss in that meeting. And if you worked with me one-on-one, I'd help you plan out what that might look like and how to have that discussion. But the chores are in place and everyone's doing what they're supposed to do. And let's say you see one of the kids who isn't performing or doing their chores, right? And so you would ask them, hey, it looks to me like you haven't completed your chores for the day and it's almost bedtime. There's still time for you to finish emptying the dishwasher, and I'd like for you to go ahead and go and do that. And, that child may come back and I don't want to do the dishwasher. I'm tired. I've had a bad day, or whatever the reason that they tell you no is. And you then have to, have a conversation about that or discipline that. Perhaps you are going to work through that and say, well, this is something that's supposed to be done nightly. I understand that you've had a busy day and everyone's frustrated and tired, but we really need to get the dishes done tonight. How are you going to do that? Or if they can't do that, or they won't do that, then maybe you're instituting a consequence and saying, we've all had a busy day, but the rest of us found time or made time to do the work that we were supposed to do. I'm sorry that you didn't make that time, but because of that, this is what the consequence is going to be. And I will help you make consequences and discuss those too. But again, we're setting up those rules, those boundaries, so that when we need to give consequences because things were done, we can refer back to the rules. So a lot of times people say, well, what happens when they just fall apart and they're not going to do it, right? They're crying on the floor now. It's bedtime and I need to get the kids in bed and I just don't have time for this tantrum, right? I don't have time to deal with what's going on. So perhaps that's the case and you decide you're going to have that discussion the next day, right? Because if you have this discussion now about what's not done, what chores are not going to be done, that is going to turn into, a mess the rest of the night. So you may choose to address it tomorrow when you have enough time, but you still have to address it because what was needed wasn't completed. So we can't just not address things we see and make excuses for our kids or for the kids, because that just comes back to bite us later, that we didn't put things in play to be able to make our kids successful. So I also want you guys to kind of think about being able to set the tone. So again, when we're disciplining, we want to make sure that we're talking about having the right tone of voice, even if we're angry, but we'll have a very stern voice, a very forceful voice in terms of the rule is this, so let's say you walk in the living room and there's socks and toys and everything thrown on the floor, and all the kids are sitting there and perhaps they're playing video games or listening to music or playing with, lots of toys all over the floor, and the living room just looks a mess. And so you might come in and say, hey guys, what's the rule about keeping the living room clean? Right? We're going to ask ahead of time, what's the rule, so that the kids can give us back what's supposed to be, even if it's broken. The rule has been broken. We want to ask, what's the rule? Because we want to make sure that they understand what was expected of them and what they weren't doing. So, you know, different kids may say different things like, well, we're not supposed to have toys on the floor. And you may say, yes, that's correct, but it looks like there's toys all over the floor. We're not supposed to be playing video games until our work is done and things are cleaned up. That's absolutely correct, but it looks like there's video games playing. So, you know, the kids know what's expected of them. They chose not to do it. And so at this point, you may say, you know, everything goes on pause. We're going to pick up as we're supposed to. And I will set the timer for 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, I expect everything to be cleaned back up. And if it's not, I'm going to give consequences. So you're giving them some grace because what should have been done isn't done. And they knew the rules ahead of it and they just didn't do it. And so you're giving them some grace to, here's your chance to fix this. I'm going to give everybody 10 minutes to work together and get it clean. And if we don't, then there's consequences, right? So someone may say, well, what happens if, you know, the rest of the kids pick up and one doesn't? Then we discipline the one who doesn't, right? So we don't punish everybody. We discipline the person who isn't working or who isn't doing what's necessary. Another thing is just making sure that we're with our sensitive children. We do a lot of pre-work on the front side. So what does pre-work on the front side look like? So that looks like structure. That looks like pre-planning on your part. That is having conversations before the event with expectations and what's supposed to happen and really setting the stage for success. So let's say the event is going to a birthday party. In the past, you've had meltdowns. Maybe your child is fight at a birthday party or hurt somebody. Maybe they choose not to listen. And so, you know, you're really on eggshells about whether you should take them. But your child knows they've been invited, they're looking forward to it, and you saying you can't go is going to cause a blow up as well, right? So it's almost like, if you do, if you don't. So you've already committed to going now. So what can we do to hopefully plan for success for taking your child to that party? So the first thing we would do is talk about what are the expectations of coming to the party, right? So we're going to go to Ryan's birthday party. What do you think mommy wants to see? What type of behavior mommy wants to see? So really asking the child what they think and how they think they're supposed to act, right? You want to see what their thoughts are and where they're at. And so they may give out some things that they've heard. So I'm not supposed to hit, I should listen to you, I'm going to follow directions, I'm going to do a good job. So they may give out some of those kind of answers. And you most definitely would say, yes, those are good things. But how are we going to listen to mommy, right? So maybe we say, when we get to their house, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off our shoes or put our shoes where they're supposed to go if they have rules about shoes, right? So we're already discussing and planning for things that may upset your child because maybe your child doesn't like to take off their shoes, or maybe they would be confused and not want to stop and take off their shoes before they went to go play with everyone at the party. So we're really setting the stage of what things might look like in order to avoid a tantrum. And so we're going to come in and we're going to take off our shoes if that's the rule, or we're going to put our coats, or we're going to put our stuff where they ask us to put it before we can go play. And ask them, do you understand what I'm saying? What's going to be the first step? So you're having them give it back to you. You may talk about, so when we get there, there's probably going to be other kids there. How do we treat our friends? And so having a discussion about, well, we treat them nicely, we don't hit people, we don't kick people, any of the behaviors that have been negative that you had before, we're going to discuss how we don't do those behaviors. I also want you to take the time and have a discussion and start talking about, so what if someone hurts you? What if someone hurts your feelings or hits you and does something that you don't like? What's going to be your reaction? So we're really preparing them for both sides, right? Because we don't want them to retaliate, hit or kick or bite or do something in retaliation as well. Because we don't want to have an episode there. So we may talk to them about, what does this look like? How can we help you through it? So, you know, what if someone hurts you? What are you going to do? And so let's say they're like, I don't know. Then you would say, well, you can come get me. I'm not going to leave the party. I'll be here. Or you can go get, I think we called the kid Ryan, maybe we can go get Ryan's mom or Ryan's anybody who is at Ryan's house who's in the parent role or authority role, we can go get an adult, right? We can get an adult to help us if someone is hurting us. Just really helping to set the stage. Talking about, so now we know this is Ryan's party, and who gets to open gifts at Ryan's party, right? So really setting, again, we're just setting the stage for success. Who doesn't get to open presents at Ryan's house? And having your kid answer. So they may say me and be sad because they like to open presents, or they may say, well, only Ryan gets to open presents, and you would agree, right? So helping them through the situation. So what happens if, asking your kid, what happens if we get a piece of cake we don't like, or we don't get the cup we don't like? What can we do? So talking to them about manners and politeness, and raising their hand and being respectful. So you're just really thinking about what could go wrong, and have we had a discussion about it? So I don't want you to think that you're just being negative, but I want you to think about it. I'm pre-planning. So if I think about what could go wrong, then I've had a discussion about it, and my kid is ready for success, and we've made a plan to work through what could go wrong. A lot of times parents are afraid to give consequences at someone else's party because they're concerned that maybe everyone will look at them. Well, if everyone has seen your child acting in an inappropriate manner, people are expecting you to discipline your child or do something about it. So saying, pardon us while we go to the car, because maybe we need to take a time out in the car, or we need to take a time out outside away from everyone, is more than appropriate, right? Preparing your child ahead of time and saying, if we have an incident and we have to go to the car for a timeout, if you can't come to the car and serve that timeout, then I'll have to just take you, bring you home, and we won't be coming back, right? So we're helping them ahead of time to know what's expected. That really helps that sensitive child to not melt down as much, because they know the expectations, they know what's to come, and they know how to react and how to act because we prepared them for it. A lot of times we don't prep ourselves in terms of prepping the child for reaction. We think about just ourselves and how can I avoid the situation? How can I dance around the situation? How can I not make them upset? But that just continues the problem of you dancing, you being worried, you maybe giving into them all the time. So that becomes the norm versus preparing for the worst and working on it on the front side before we get there. So then, again, what happens if we do have those incidents and we have to discipline? Like I said, we can always take a kiddo to the car. Maybe we need to have a timeout outside if the weather's nice. And perhaps don't be afraid or ashamed. If you have to go, you have to go, right? If the behavior has gotten to a point that it's out of control, then we don't just let the child continue out of control at someone else's house. We say, I'm really sorry, this doesn't seem to be working for us. We scoop our kid up and we go, right? We sometimes worry about how people are going to think about us or address us. It's embarrassing to do that. Maybe if I just let it die down, it'll quit. There's no guarantee that's going to happen. And so you just set yourself up to be dealing with even more, because perhaps what's crying on the side may turn to yelling, may turn to screaming, spitting, hitting, all kinds of behaviors, and you don't know what's going to spiral next. So it's best that if you can't get control of the situation, it's time to take our child and go. And don't worry about it. Most parents know or have been there and are sympathetic to you instead of judging. A lot of times parenting is based on the judgment that you think you're going to receive for someone else. So you parent based on that. And so, while logical in some ways, also not logical, because most parents have been there and they're not judging you, they're not judging the situation. Most of the time there's understanding, like, I've been there. Oh, that's really hard. You may even be thinking, glad that's not me anymore, right? I have twins. And so going somewhere with two kids and hoping for the best was always, what I could do. And I had a behavior child, and it's just like, how are we going to do this? And when it's time to go, how do I not punish the other child, right? So I spent a lot of time living in fear and thinking about how we could manipulate a situation to just make it through and not punish both people. And I always say to myself, I wish I'd known then what I know now in terms of parenting, because I think I could have been more successful. but I just didn't know what I didn't know. And as the saying goes, you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. That's how it was for me. And so as I, worked more on behavior and worked more through it, I can definitely say, oh, I wish I would have done that now. And as a grandparent, I can help my son to really work through the parenting. We recently had a birthday party and my grandson was acting out and my son was like, you know better, one. And he paused. And so I turned, I'm like, well, what's getting ready to happen? And the child's like falling on the ground and he's like, you heard me, let's not do this, one. And so I said, well, when does two come, sir? What's next? And he kind of looked at me and he's like, well, usually he gets up and stops at one. I said, but now there was a long pause and we probably should have been at three and nothing was done. So all you did was reiterate that if he doesn't listen, you'll just stand here and keep counting and keep hoping something's coming versus putting something into action to change the behavior. Because the next time he falls out, dad'll count, dad'll do this, dad'll do that. And, it doesn't matter. There's no reason to change the behavior because there hasn't been any consequence implemented and there hasn't been any belief or follow through with dad in our instance, so that his son believed that there would be a next step. And so when I, as grandma, stepped in, because they were at my house, I said, we're going to pick this up or we're going to put it away and it's gone for the day, right? It's unavailable. It's not coming back. We don't pick it up. We don't get to play with it, right? And so he knows I'm consistent. He knows when I say those rules that I mean them. And I said, we're going to pick it up now. Or if, and I call myself Mimi, if Mimi has to pick it up, it's gone and we're still going to sit in the chair. We're going to sit in the chair and you're going to serve your 4 minutes and we're done. And so he very slowly picked his stuff up where my son had spent 3 different times counting and nothing had happened. And so, a lot of that is consistency. My grandson knows that when I say what I say, I mean it. And if it's gone, it's gone. You don't get to get it back. It doesn't matter if you cry for it. Doesn't matter if you beg for it. Doesn't even matter if you're good for the rest of the day. When I tell you it's gone, and I like to use the words it's unavailable because that means it can come back. When you say it's gone, depending on the age of the kid, they don't know what's happened to it. And that can be scary or be very worrisome. Did you throw it away? If you threaten to throw things away, when's it coming back? You didn't give me a time. So, I often say it's unavailable for the rest of the day. Perhaps we can try again the next time you come over because he doesn't live with me. Or, you can try again later if that's going to be what you decide. But being unavailable means you just can't play with it now. So that gives you as the parent a chance to put it back in play later on if you've seen success or change behavior. So planning ahead also has you thinking about consequences. Perhaps if the situation isn't going to be a consequence. Sorry, I'm sitting on a ball and it's about to fall off of it. So if the situation, let's say you don't want to do consequences, maybe you're going to reward the kid for being successful there, right? You're going to give out stickers. Perhaps you're saying, if we can have a great time at the birthday party, we'll stop on the way home and get ice cream. So maybe you want to do the reward system instead. And we can talk about what that might look like and how you reward time. Because if we do one thing there at the party, are we done and don't get the reward? Because if I do one thing wrong early on, then the reward is gone. There's no reason for me to have continued better behavior because what do I have to lose now? I lost my ice cream. So what? That might be the thinking. So, breaking up time chunks or having successes built in could help in terms of rewards and then being able to reward something at the end that's better. So depending on the situation, we usually talk about what's better in terms of consequences or rewards. But again, that structure really helps that sensitive child to not fall apart because they don't know what's next. They know how you're feeling because you're consistent with them. You're talking to them in that tone that's, strong and that this is what I mean and this is what we're going to do. And you're really setting that stage for success. And the other thing is making sure that our punishments aren't harsh or corporal. So we're not acting out of negative reactions or behavior or anything like that. We don't want to say things that we can't implement. An example of that, let's say you're planning on going on family vacation and the kids are really acting up and you're like, that's it. If everybody doesn't get it together, I'm canceling vacation. So unless you're willing to follow through with that, we really shouldn't put empty threats on the table, right? So we want to make sure that our parenting makes sense, right? So we don't want to threaten things that we can't take away. Or what are you going to do if everyone else reacts but one child? So is that one child not going to come on vacation? Because if not, the rest of the kids see, oh, we changed our behavior and we did what we're supposed to, but this child didn't, and they still get to come. So why would we do what we're supposed to when we see the outcome is the same for everyone? So making sure that when we set consequences, it's something that we can follow through with, and that we have the means to make sure that can happen. We also, with our sensitive children, really want to recognize the positive things that they do, right? So pointing out when they do good things, when they're acting well, when they're discussing their emotions, when they're helping you to understand who they are, just really praising them for that. You know, I like how you behaved today when we went to the park. I really liked how you communicated with me. I like the way whatever the answer is, everybody likes praise. You know, if your boss came in and told you you did a really good job on the report, they like what they saw, you're more likely to do the reports the same way if it was good. You're going to feel proud of yourself. You're going to be happy that your boss acknowledged you. Or kids are the same way. They want to hear and feel that acknowledgement, and they want to hear that they're doing a good job. They don't want to just hear the negative from us. So when they're not doing well, when they're disruptive behavior, when they're not doing things they're supposed to, we constantly just get on them and give them no praise. You know, the saying goes, it's really hard to pour from an empty bucket. Well, it's really hard to be positive when you don't have anything inside to be positive about. So how are we filling up our kids' buckets? Even if they're behaviorally challenged, how are we filling up those buckets so that they feel good about themselves, or that they want to be better, they want to try harder? And that's just kind of usually as simple as some praise and sometimes what I call spontaneous rewards. So you catch them being good, you catch them doing the right things, and you spontaneously reward them with that. Or maybe all the kids are getting along and doing a good job, and you say, everybody's done great. Maybe we're going to go as a family to the park because of everyone's good behavior, or we're going to go get ice cream, or we're going to go do something like that. So that's how you can spontaneously reward good behavior. So helping your child to learn, you can't control what someone says or does, but you can control how you react. So a lot of times the oversensitive child gets their feelings hurt and you don't know which way they're going to go with it. It may be falling out crying. It may be hurting other people and hitting and tantruming. You just don't know what that sensitive child is going to do. So helping them to understand that, you know, how you react to someone makes a difference. So how do we feel when someone hurts our feelings? What are some things that we can do when we're feeling this way, and really help them to be able to process through having those emotions so that they have a plan in place. You know, I call them coping skills sometimes. How can we cope with what life has thrown us when we're upset? So helping them to have a plan. So I'm really upset. And so maybe I go to my room and journal until I calm down. Maybe I have a calm down jar that I shake and watch all the glitter get to the bottom. And when the glitter is at the bottom, I can take some breaths and refocus. Helping them have some calm down strategies. Sometimes it's the deep breath, it's blowing, it's refocusing. So maybe you have some imagery for them and what they think about when they're angry. So really helping them to have what I call coping skills in their back pocket. So if they get upset, their reaction is not hitting, kicking, biting, screaming, tantruming, hurting other people. It's the skills that you've worked on and putting them in play. A lot of times that may be a gentle reminder from you. So sometimes you can discuss what I call code words. So if you are upset, and you see your child upset, and perhaps you guys have decided that you guys will use the code word popcorn. And so you may gently walk over beside them and just say popcorn, and they know, oh, I need to put a coping skill in play because I'm too worked up, right? Now, does that always happen if they're already worked up? No. Sometimes you may need to say, hey, we need to use a coping skill. I feel like you're out of control. We really need to use a coping skill. And ask them, which one would you like to use? Like really just be face to face with them, get into their face so that they don't have everything else going on. If you feel that's safe, if they're not a hitter or a spitter or something else, but really regaining them focus and saying, hey, I know you're really struggling right now. Let's do a coping skill. What would you like to do? Do you want to blow bubbles with me? Do you want to count with me? Can we do some deep breaths? And you may even say, let me go first. Ready? I'm going to do a big breath and hold it and let it out softly. So, right, we're deep breathing with them. We're doing some type of skill so that they can really refocus and you can calm them down and be able to talk to them and help them to see what's going on. And what do we do with the kids who, they get so out of control so fast, maybe you don't even have time to implement a coping strategy because they're already screaming, hitting, kicking, biting, whatever. I will definitely help you work through what timeout looks like, depending on the age of your kid. We have what's called time in. So 2 different strategies definitely would help you work through those. But having a plan in place for yourself helps you to be successful, to be reactive immediately to the problem at hand versus letting it go on. And then we've maybe helped that child to think like it's okay to react in that manner. So, being reactive is this, not our first step. We want to be proactive, but sometimes we do have to be reactive to the situation. And, how are we going to be able to do that? Sometimes we want to talk to our kids about their face, right? How do you look when I talk to you? Maybe you have a child who grimaces the whole time you're talking to them. They have an angry face. And it doesn't matter what you're saying, that they keep that angry face. And, to many others, that might be rude and disrespectful. So how do we help them work on, their facial and the way their face looks, help them work on, the tone of their voice. We definitely emphasize that with teens. A lot of times it's not what you say, it's how you say it. We really work a lot with teens on hearing themselves. Responding to how they respond. So a kid may say, I hear you. And then you are reactive, like, why would you be yelling? And they're like, I'm not yelling at you. I just said I heard you. And you're like, actually, you did yell. And what I heard was you yelling and saying, and that's rude and disrespectful. So I need your tone to change. I need this to change, right? So working with them to help them hear themselves, to understand the things that they said. Perhaps they really didn't think they said it. And until you reminded them that they said it, they didn't hear themselves. It's possible, absolutely possible. They just were reactive to you. What's the rule in response, right? So for a time in my life, I had a child that was very rude and disrespectful, and he was only allowed to respond to me and say, yes, ma'am, for the initial response, because I didn't want to hear, what? I hear you. What do you want? That was rude and disrespectful to me. So when I made a request, they could only respond with yes, ma'am, that they heard me, and then I would follow through in the request. That was more for them that was a step for them to recognize their tone and voice and how they were going to speak to me the next time they spoke. So it was, in a way, instituting a coping skill to stop the negative behavior, negative response to me first, and give them time to respond to my next request so that they could have a better tone with me. So again, that's all about putting strategies in play and what strategies are going to work best for your family. One of the things that Triple P really, really focuses on is making sure that the strategies fit your child, fit you, and fit your household. So we don't come with a one-step approach for everybody. We really work hard to make sure what we're implementing is going to work for you and your family. And I say you and your family because, What works for you may not be acceptable for someone else. So if you came to me and your kid tantrum 10 times a day, and we got it down to 4, you may say that's acceptable. And that's great for me because it used to be 10 times. Whereas somebody else may say, 4 times is unacceptable. I wouldn't accept that. And so, we would continue to work till it got to a level that's acceptable for you. So I want you to understand that I don't set the stage to that. I really let you tell me what you want for your family and what's going to work best. All right, so we've kind of talked about how we react, making sure that we have direct discipline, and then making sure we're talking about the tone, our tone, their tone, and being proactive. And then we also want to talk about, so what happens with the child that just gets upset easily? They start crying, and in your head you want to say there's nothing to cry about, there's no reason to cry, but they are so worked up. That's the only emotion that they can let out. That's the only way that they can get what they're feeling out. Sometimes my kids who are very angry cry, right? They're angry tears. They're not tears because they're sad, but they're angry tears. And, I had one teen say, it's better to cry than to hit something. And I had to agree with them at that point. But they got very embarrassed when they cried because they felt like it was a sign of weakness and people didn't have respect for them or wanted to call them a baby or some other negativity associated with crying. So we really had to work through, if crying isn't what you want it to do, how do we help that feeling when it's coming up? So helping them to be able to maybe clear their throat, close their eyes and refocus, try to think of something else so that the tears can stop coming. Maybe they need to close their eyes and count to 10 and just really try to drown out everything that's going on around them so that the tears don't come. Being able to hum or sing a song inside their head could be helpful. And the other thing is just maybe taking long, slow, deep breaths and just, trying to what I call catch the tears on the back end so they can feel them coming. Sometimes you don't want to blink because a blink would let that tear out, but just really trying to reset yourself and calm yourself so that the tears don't come. And letting them know that that's a work in progress. It doesn't happen instantly and there may be some tears, but when they can learn to control their emotions, they're less likely to be reactive with those emotions. And being able to control their emotion, having some coping skills, having a supportive, parent at home who says, I understand, you're willing to listen to them and help them work through it, are all ways to help that sensitive child to be successful. So what about the kid who you're having a whole discussion with and they look like they could care less while you're talking to them? So you're trying to help that child understand that their facial expressions make a difference, calling that into play. Sometimes you need to ignore that behavior or stop the discussion, right? It looks like you're not understanding or participating in what I say. We're going to take a 5-minute break. And when we come back, I want you to be able to look at my eyes. I want you to be able to focus on the things that I'm saying and not with the scowl and not with an angry look, right? So pointing out, I know the way you're feeling and responding to me is not in a nice way or a positive way or a way that I want to continue to deal with. So we're going to take a break and then we're going to come back and discuss it or come back and have that conversation. Sometimes it just gives them, again, a chance to regroup, get themselves back together and be able to come back and have a conversation with you. So I want to give us, time to be able to have some questions. But what are you guys thinking about, the things that we've talked about? Do you feel like some of these strategies would help you with your sensitive child? I'll kind of pop to the chat here. Yes, still please take the survey, even though it says that date. I'll make myself a note to go fix that. I didn't realize I had exact dates on it. I thought it was just like, it may have said like 2020 on the beginning, but on the inside, there wasn't any date. So I can please still do that, and I will fix the link title. So Greene County did have triple P. If you will email me, I will check to see if they are still doing triple P. A lot of times these things are grant funded. Like I said, mine is funded through the Boone County Children's Services Board. And so if they reallocate funds or stop funding something, sometimes these things just unfortunately go away. So triple P was in Greene County, so I can double check on that. What other kind of things are you guys thinking about, especially if you have a sensitive child? You know, is there a situation or a time that you can think of that's been stressful for you, or anything like that? All right. So this one says, I have a 3-year-old that may scream or roar when frustrated playing inside, running around the house. When I say quiet, please, inside voice, it just continues on a new level and seems to fuel his anger. Any suggestions? So yes, so my first thing I would say to you is, what's the rule about playing inside, or what's the rule about what we're gonna do, right? So when we're getting ready to have that free play and we know that this may be an issue, we wanna say, hey, we're gonna get ready to play inside. What's the rule about playing inside? So we use our inside voices. Sometimes we may even say we don't scream inside. If you want to say no roaring, you can make that an inside rule, or you can say we only do soft roars. Now, if you're going to say we only do soft roars, then when you're going over the rules before we let play happen, we demonstrate. So what's a soft roar look like? And so you have your kids show you, or you do it first. So show me a loud roar. They'd be like, roar. Then you'd say, show me a soft roar. And then you'd say, roar, right? So you're demonstrating them to difference in what you want to hear. And so then if you get to being loud roars again, you say, hey, I'm hearing loud roaring. What's a soft roar sound like? And have them stop their play and show you, and then say yes. And if we can't continue soft roars, then we're gonna have to, you know, take a time out and sit and get our bodies ready to have inside play again. So it's okay, you know, to have them come sit for those 3 minutes. And then reintroduce them back into play, right? And if we have to continue to reintroduce it, then we say, it looks like we can't have this type of play inside. So we can choose from the following activities. So maybe it's now coloring, it's this, it's that, or the other, but we have some other things that we can do instead of inside play now because we couldn't do it quietly. So again, that's planning ahead, having that discussion with what does inside play look like? What does inside play sound like? What are the rules to it? And if we break the rules, and again, we're talking about breaking the rules before it ever happens. If we break the rules, what are we going to do? So we might have to come do a timeout, or we might have to choose other activities, or inside play is done for the day. So really, again, having that conversation ahead of time and helping them be successful. All right, next question. When the teacher disciplines my 9-year-old wrongly because it's on Zoom, hard to tell if the kid is focusing or doing the right thing at the right time. He can get very frustrated, can cry, and can't focus because he's so angry he was called out unfairly. Okay. So one of the things that you could do with that is, again, setting the stage. So when we're on Zoom, what do we do when we're on Zoom? How do we focus? How do we raise our hand if we need to be excused? What does being a good Zoom listener look like? And so I would ask that of your child. What does being a good Zoom listener look like? And let him tell you. And so, and then say, so what do you think happens if we're not being a good listener? What might happen? Well, the teacher may call me out, you know, have him discuss some things like that. And then discuss, well, how does that make us feel? So maybe we're angry, we might get upset, we may want to cry. And even saying, you know, being able to ask him what might help you if you're feeling like that, right? So maybe it's, again, that 5-minute timeout, and he needs to raise his hand and say, I will be back, or I need to step away. On the flip side, though, you're going to talk to the teacher and say, hey, my child is really struggling when you call him out on Zoom. and it makes him get very angry, or he may cry or get frustrated. We've talked about on this end that we talked about what it looks like to be a good Zoom listener and learner, and you can even tell her what you guys came up with or what he came up with. And if he's struggling with that, is there any way that you can just gently remind the class, hey, I want to have good Zoom listeners and learners. Let's all make sure that we're being good listeners and learners. And so that's a key for him to refocus. And if not, tell the teacher that you've instructed him that if he's feeling angry or he's going to cry, that he's going to raise his hand and ask to step away, and that you would appreciate it if she would just let that happen, because we don't want the negative side of things to continue. So hopefully that discussion would aid in your child knowing what behaviors are expected, and the teacher really realizing that calling kids out maybe isn't a productive thing to do. And perhaps the teacher didn't realize like what the outcome of what she was doing could cause, or he was doing could cause. All right, a 3-year-old that bursts into tears anytime scolded. Will you ask, are you mad? The answer is no, I'm not mad. I'm just upset or disappointed that you're not listening, misbehaving. Super sensitive. So I'm not sure I understand. Will the child ask, are you mad? And then you say, no, I'm not mad. You're upset at their behavior, that you're not listening or you're misbehaving. Is that like, yes, the child asked. Okay. So I would say to you, when you're scolding that 3-year-old, have you discussed the rules, or have you discussed what's expected first? Because if so, you would have given a warning maybe before that scolding. So let's say they're running in the house and the rule is no running in the house. And so you would be like, Sarah, you're running in the house and the rule is no running in the house. If you continue to run, you're going to have to take a timeout, or you're going to have to, whatever the consequence is going to be. And so you're not just getting onto them and saying, hey, we know there's no running in the house. Why are you running in the house? And your tone and your body language implies that you're mad at them, right? So that's why they're saying, are you mad? And your answer is, I'm not mad. I'm upset or disappointed that you're not listening. But they've taken or learned at 3, that tone has been also probably used when you were mad. And so it sounds the same. And so if we're able to give that reminder that they're doing the wrong thing, and give them a chance to change their behavior, then you're correcting the behavior, not the child, so to speak. And when you have to give a consequence, then your words of, I'm just upset or I'm disappointed that you weren't listening or misbehaving, can come through a little differently, because you've already given that warning, and given them a chance to correct the behavior before you had to, really scold them or get on to them or put them in timeout. They kind of knew it was coming. So again, it's easier to accept your consequence when you know that consequence is coming. So, making sure we're doing that work on the front end and discussing what's expected, and discussing what's going to come next if we don't. And making sure that we are able to tell them, you're going into timeout because, mommy's really upset that I asked you to stop running and you continue to run. And so now we're going to set in timeout for the next 3 minutes. And when we come out, mommy expects you to play without running in the house, right? So we're talking about what they did. We're telling them we gave you a chance to correct their behavior. You didn't, so now you're setting in timeout. And when you get out, here's the expectation that I expect of you. So we're really setting this stage for success, even though we had a bump in the road. So does that kind of help some of you guys in the questions that were asked? Okay, good. So most definitely, if there's questions that I can answer, you guys have my email address. Most definitely willing to do some of those one-on-ones, and really kind of help you guys focus through some of those behaviors. But that sensitive child, really needs that structure and to know what comes next. Sometimes that behavior that you see from that sensitive child rears on what we may be like some form of anxiety of, I don't know what's going to come next, or I don't know how to behave, or I don't know how to act. And the only thing I can do is react And those reactions may be, very negative, or it may be a total meltdown because they're just so overwhelmed. So when we can set the stage for them to know what's coming next, to know what the expectation is, to know what's going on, that's really helpful. I also suggest for your sensitive child, depending on their age and how much they can comprehend, is talking about the schedule for the day. And maybe you talk about that in chunks. So let's say maybe while you're getting dressed with them in the morning, if you hadn't had breakfast yet, we're going to go downstairs and eat breakfast. And then we're going to maybe go to daycare, or if they don't go, we're going to eat breakfast and then we're going to have some color time, just kind of talking through what the day might look like so that they have structure in the day. If you plan to go somewhere later or have errands to run, be thinking, what's my best time to do that in terms of what's my best time to get me the best behavior. So I met with a mom who really struggled with her kid tantruming. When they went to the store, or they, when she tried to run errands and pay bills and do things. And so as we talked through her timeline, this 3-year-old was getting up about 6 a.m. and, having breakfast at 6:30 because they had to be out the house at 7 to drop off the teens to middle school. And then they had a little bit of time where, they just kind of messed around in the car, truthfully, until it was time to drop off the other child at school. And so, she would come home. By now it's almost 9 o'clock. They would get, some things done for the afternoon and have lunch, but she wouldn't put him down till about noon. And he would have to get up at 2 o'clock, 1:45, 2 o'clock for her to be able to go pick up the teens and pick up the other ones. And so if she had tried to run an errand in between, then it was between that 9 and 11 o'clock time. And so she didn't have any snacks with her. She hadn't really thought about extra things to play with, things to occupy the child while they were in the store, because remembering the child had been up since 6 or 6:30 that morning. And so they needed another nap. They needed a snack. They needed something else. And she wasn't prepared for that. So when we walked through the schedule, she realized, all right, I wasn't prepared for the mornings. And so we had tantrums. I wasn't really putting them down early enough so they could get their full amount of sleep before we had to get up and go get the other kids and get running again. And then they really didn't get a good, nap. And so they were tired in the afternoon. And a lot of the behaviors that we were seeing was because they were tired. So when we could restructure her schedule and plan when would be a good time to do things, we really saw the tantrums almost just disappear because she was prepared and planned and had better timing for the things that she wanted to do. So sometimes it's just about the timing of the things that we're going to do when we see some of this behavior that may be a struggle. The last thing I kind of want to hit on again is if you have a sensitive child, really working on your tone, right? Because a lot of times what they hear or interpret is anger, frustration, disappointment. They hear that in your voice when maybe it may be something else, right? Again, like the person said in the chat, they were upset with the behaviors they were doing, not the child, but the child hears your words or your tone and says, it's me that you're upset with, me as a whole, not me as my behavior. So we kind of talked about at the very beginning, being able to check your tone, take 5 minutes if you're mad before you talk to them, just really setting the stage for success. Maybe you need to pull them aside and say, hey, we're just going to take a rest, right? That's not a consequence or a punishment. We're going to take a rest before we begin to do something else, really giving them some transition time or some time to get themselves together before you move on to the next task. And then also making sure that we're giving good transition times. So talking about not only what the schedule for the day is, but giving warnings. So, hey, we're going to have to pick up our toys in 20 minutes because we're going to have to leave the house, so they're prepared that we're going to have to pick up toys in 20 minutes. So then in 10 minutes, we say we only have 10 minutes. We need to start to decide to pick some stuff up and maybe only play with a few things right now. And that 5-minute warning. And at 5 minutes, we really need to start picking up the toys because we're going to have to be done in 5 minutes. So helping them to break down the chunks of time to get things picked up. And then the other thing I suggest is having rules about how many things can come out at once, right? So if we say free for all with toys and they bring everything out, well, usually they don't want to pick everything up when it's time. So if we have things in totes, they can pull out one tote at a time. And if they want to play with something else, they put that back in and put that tote away. That helps with the falling out, about having to pick up so much stuff and they're too tired and they can't do it. And all the emotions that are built up now because they're overwhelmed with picking up all the mess that they pulled out. So if you can limit the mess in the beginning, then there's less to be stressed about when it's time to pick it all up. And if it's a total meltdown and things are all over the place and you're going to have to pick it up, you would prefer to only have to pick up a bin yourself than pick up the entire living room that's, has toys thrown everywhere. So that's kind of another tip in there. Any other questions you guys can think of, or things maybe I missed, or things that you were thinking in your head, oh, I wish you would have covered this? Anything you might be thinking? All right, well, I think we have covered everything. I'm gonna throw it back over to Sarah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Catherine. We're so happy you could come tonight, everybody. It's hard not to wave after a Zoom event. I did put the next workshop in the chat, so you can sign up for that. And I will go ahead and send out the survey and the recording to everybody who registered. So you may get an email with this recording in it as well. But we also then will ask people that watch the recording to fill out the survey as well. So thanks a lot for coming, and we hope to see you next time.
Bye, everyone.